Uh, how about Bradley, if I just give a little historical background and then you could speak to your experience of it? Does that work?
Sounds great.
Okay. So the Transformational Leadership Initiative was born when St. Andrew's United Church in Halifax went through a remissioning process. Over the course of about a dozen years, St. Andrew's had really evolved as a faith community. It's physically placed at an intersection, a busy intersection in the middle of the city. So it's a crossroads physically. And a lot of people of different backgrounds are coming through the building every Sunday night. A couple hundred or more homeless and poor people are fed, all kinds of different groups using the space. But progressively, we were moving into interfaith cooperation with organizations or communities like the Mi'kmaq Friendship Center, Shambhala Buddhist Community, Synagogue, the Ummah Mosque. And when St. Andrews went through a remissioning process, folks began to realize that this intersectionality, this making of connections across the boundaries of religion, race, class, language, background, sexual identity, was really becoming a key strand in the DNA of St. Andrews. So we hired a social enterprise called Common Good Solutions to, and by the way, Carla Leone in Toronto facilitated the introduction to Common Good Solutions, which is located about a kilometer from St. Andrews, but we'd never heard of them. We hired them to do a research piece on how we might move forward with this mission of intersectionality and to combine it with our sustainability pursuits so that they're mutually reinforcing. Common Good came up with some options and then helped us workshop the options with 50 different community organizations, maybe more than that. And what was born out of that was the idea for something called the Center for Social and Spiritual Innovation, which is to have three components: an interfaith and justice-oriented hub to be built at St. Andrews, along with the redevelopment of the property. That would include common workspace, shared offices. The sanctuary has been renovated to be a big multi-use space with flexible seating and AV resources. So the hub was one element. The second was new spaces for spiritual practice of different kinds. And then the third was the Transformational Leadership Initiative, which was meant to respond to two crises. One is the historical siloing of leaders in Nova Scotia. So siloing of leaders and change makers within the Mi'kmaq community, the African Nova Scotian community, immigrant communities, refugee communities, urban, rural, et cetera, et cetera. And the other was that we were seeing burnout in change makers all over the place. So this program was designed to bring together and create community and resilience amongst very demographically diverse cohorts of people, about 24 each time. And a year ago, we ran the first cohort. Bradley was part of that. About half of the cohort was made up of people of African descent of some kind or other, African Nova Scotian, Caribbean Canadian, African refugee, etc. About a quarter was made up of Indigenous folks, and the rest was a really motley crew of others. And it was a magic moment where community was formed with a depth and a strength and has been generative ever since. All of these spontaneous building of relationships and initiatives. That's just sort of taking on a life of its own with lots of help from the Embracing the Spirit grants. So I need to recover and breathe now, Bradley, so over to you.
Yeah, so thanks, Russ. I couldn't have put it better as far as the group that was in attendance. And I think the leadership was also a reflection of the group, which was very important. Even when you enter a space and you look around to see who the leadership is, and when you see yourself reflected in the leadership team, that weighs on you as an individual. So even stepping into the space as a last minute addition, actually, I felt that this was something that was for me. Um, so as a participant, um, I went in kind of like I said, as a last minute addition, so I didn't have much of an expectation as far as what I was kind of getting into. And so uh, as the what felt like weeks went on, no, in just a few short days, um, I was able to deeply connect with, and when I say diverse, I mean, it's almost overused term these days, but in every sense of the word, diverse, from an age, sexuality, gender, um, background, life experience, artistic experience. It was just an incredibly unique group. And so everybody sort of contributed in their own ways, and I learned a lot from all of the different kind of experiences and lived experiences, and it was quite humbling in being in a group where I felt that I did not want to kind of take up space, because I actually felt kind of quite privileged as far as you don't often want to compare your experience to somebody else, but there are humbling moments when you do realize that this is not the space for me to take up space, the time for me to take up space. And it was one of those. And uh, uh, one of the biggest kind of learning moments was the person who was maybe had probably a lot and maybe even the most to share, was the person who said the least. And it was one of those things that you step back from and you're just kind of amazed with kind of the wisdom that you're sort of witnessing. But yeah, I guess, even some of the conversations you have with people, you don't realize how they're impacting that person's life until the time is and space is created for them to reflect. And when you create an environment where people feel so open and comfortable to be able to relax enough to actually share what they've kind of gone through and be vulnerable, and feel safe enough to be vulnerable. That's a really, I hadn't really experienced kind of anything like that before. And so, we all kind of jokingly walked out of that knowing, not jokingly, actually, kind of actually knowing each other better than we knew some of our closest friends. And it was an experience kind of that I'll cherish. It was an experience I look forward to at some point getting to experience again. That was supposed to be in the more short term, but looking now more long term. And it was an experience I felt so strongly about, that as a social entrepreneur myself, and as somebody who has the privilege of going to international social enterprise events, when I was made aware that, and part of kind of some of the group that is organizing, that was organizing, well, still is, the 2020 Social Enterprise World Forum, in my city. I felt so strongly that what have I gotten out of the Social Enterprise World Forums? And if somebody was coming to my city in Halifax, what would I want them to take away from that experience? And so, Russ and I had talked, and I thought it was maybe a decent idea that we create a global TLI and have hold a space where people can hopefully feel as safe as we did and vulnerable as we did to kind of build those deep connections. And those connections have continued past just that weekend. and into our everyday lives, you know, of just kind of communally coming together, or whether it be just moral support, or whether it be actually doing sort of social good and business together, or whatever it may be. Those linkages have been strong and have continued to carry forward. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly what else I can share as far as that goes, but yeah, that's just a little bit about what it was like as a participant and where I saw it going. I don't know. It may be 2021 before we're able to do a global TLI, as they just announced today that SEWF is postponed until June 2021. But there will be a virtual SCWF in September. Um, but yeah, that was my experience, and again, felt strongly enough about it to want to create a global TLI and give that experience to folks that were coming here. So yeah.
I guess, Joshua, one last thing is the context for the first 4 days that the cohort gathers, so the opening retreat, which is a big part of it, is Windhorse Farm, which is this fantastic retreat place nestled within 400 acres of sustainably managed forest, opened by Shambhala Buddhists and very expert in land-based practices. So the first thing we do actually is a night walk together in the forest with no lights and almost no conversation till the debrief at the end. So the setting for the group building at the beginning is very important.
Thank you.